Hello and welcome. Today is a talk that I've been really looking forward to. I know I look forward to all my guests, I really do. And I think I say this at the beginning of every podcast. But today we are joined by somebody who I am really privileged to be able to call a friend now, and somebody I didn't know before she joined the menopause program, our menopause program. And her name is Naz, and Naz is joining us today. Naz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Meera. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Naz, tell us a little bit about yourself, and who you are, and then we'll kind of the focus of the conversation today is very much about menopause in the corporate world. So, perhaps if you could just let our listeners know who you are and what you do.
Absolutely, and that's a real big question, isn't it, Meera? Who are you? Because we wear so many hats. But
Open up and earth a whole can of worms there. Yeah.
so I'm Naz. I'll talk a little bit about my professional world and then a little bit about my personal world because I think now everything coincides, doesn't it? They all collide and work together, particularly in this hybrid world that we seem to find ourselves in. So I work in the banking industry. I work for Barclays and have done so coming up to 18 years now. So it's a
Wow.
big part of my career actually. Um, I work in corporate banking, which is very much looking after clients in the corporate space. And I head up the charities team at Barclays. All my clients operate in the charities space. So I look after UK fundraising charities, humanitarian aid charities, museums, galleries, and not for profits. It's quite a diverse sector that I look after, but I have a team of people who manage those client relationships across the UK. It's a really interesting sector to work in. It's also got a lot of purpose. You can actually see the difference that you make every day in that sector. And I thoroughly enjoy it. And I've been in that role now probably about 5 years, but I've done a multitude of roles across banking. And then from a personal perspective, I'm married. I'm going to be 47 years old this year, so I'm definitely in that perimenopausal place, which you know very well, Meera. Um, and I have a 14-year-old son, so Ilian is 14, so dealing with teenagers is an interesting time in life. So you can imagine there's a lot of hormonal activity in my household at the moment. I think my husband probably thinks to himself, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And I haven't even reached menopause yet, so that will be really exciting for him. So yeah, and that's just a little bit about me, and yeah, and really, like you say, Mira, really privileged to call you a friend, and I'm so happy that I joined your program earlier this year.
Oh, thank you. Wow. So you're kind of full on with everything, right? You've got uh, a, a job, a full time, really kind of a job which is just requires all your attention and your time, and then you've also got, you've got a young teenage boy, you've got a husband, so you've got family, you've got everything sort of going on really. Um, and I remember when you approached me actually a while ago now. How long ago was it? I can't even remember. Do you remember?
It was back end of last year, Mira, because I joined your program in January. So it was kind of
January.
we were on another talk together, weren't we, with around coaching and women, and
That's right.
we connected that way. And I'd obviously seen you online anyway, with Mira's Made from Scratch and all the great work you were doing, and I just knew that I needed to do something, and I think that's how we connected.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I remember when we did connect up, it was a space where, and I think a lot of women go through this, where they're not quite sure what's going on with their body. They don't quite understand what's happening. But actually, you were quite. It was lovely to see that you were able to kind of see a little bit ahead and think, right, I need to get some education and stuff in place now
Yeah.
because I can feel these changes happening. How was that? What was actually happening, in terms of kind of your work balance, your life balance? What were the things that were going on that led you to kind of think, right, I need to do something about this?
Oh gosh. Well, I think, having been in a pandemic, having been in and out of lockdown for sort of 2.5 years was a real, I think it was a changing point for everyone, right? Because we were working from home. It was relentless. Like, People, I think in the beginning, the novelty was, oh, I'm working from home, I'm going to have more time to do things. And when I would see people having all this time, I'm thinking, what is it that they're doing that I'm not? Because I don't have any of this time. I'm
I
working.
had no time.
There's no boundaries, right, between work and life. So your work life and your home life were just merging into one. I had my son homeschooling, which, is was tough for him. He didn't enjoy it at all. I had my husband working from home, no boundaries. So you end up working earlier, finishing later,
Yeah,
and I could see that just wasn't good for my well-being anyway. And I literally plowed myself into work, and I tried to do things for myself, go for a walk every day, etc., etc. But it was so easy not to do that when you're kind of, oh, I've got to cook the dinner, or I've got to do this, or finish this one last email. So that was all kind of happening, and then we came out of sort of lockdowns into trying to get back to some normality. And I knew my body was changing, Mira. I mean, the biggest thing I've experienced, I think, is just brain fog. Actually, it's that inability for me to process information as quickly as I used to, or to retain information as quickly as I used to. And when you're in a job like I am, it is just, it's 100 miles an hour. And I just felt like, I can't keep up with this. So I think it was that as well. And I just felt like I do exercise. I remember telling you, but Mira, I exercise quite a lot. But it was what I was doing and what I was eating and all of that kind of stuff that I just thought, you know what, I need to do this. This is going to be really good for me, and it's going to be really good, for my education when I hit that menopausal period, which I assume is not very far away.
yeah, yeah. No, thank you for sharing all of this as well, because actually, I think one of the things that I remember um, having, and it was, there were various symptoms, but one of the things that I remember being the most scared about was this brain fog, was the lack of concentration, was the retention for the context of what I was reading. So I'd be able to read a line literally, but then I wouldn't be able to put it into context because I'd forgotten what, three lines up, what
Exactly.
it was that I had read. And like yourself, I mean, you're in a corporate world. I was running a business. So it's sort of, I was able to try and navigate and maneuver within that, and try and create some flexibility within that. And I had put things into place to help support myself. And I actually had to have that conversation with my team to say, okay, guys, listen. I mean, I this is what's happening. This is how it's feeling for me, and I really just need a little bit of support. And I remember having to like get Harry to help me read emails, or I would get my team to read the emails with me so that I understood, not with me, but so that I understood what was going on. I was making little notes on the side and stuff. How has it, or is it impacting your corporate world, your ability to be able to perform within the job that you're required to do, but also just kind of throwing in there, which I know is another big question, but how ha- how have you dealt with it within your team? And it's a large organization. Barclays
Yeah.
is huge. So how is that kind of, how have you been able to approach them, or have you?
Well, I think in the beginning, I just thought to myself, what's going on? And actually, you lose a lot of confidence. So I felt my confidence levels had dropped. I felt quite
Yeah,
anxious about things. So, when you're working from home, you're in your comfort zone, right? You're wearing your shorts probably underneath and a nice, you look good from top upwards. And
you're
then
up.
when
Yeah,
you're still kind of hiding behind a screen in some
yeah,
respects, right? So
yeah,
that's very different. And I was used to presenting to large audiences in person. And I remember, going back into the office, and I'd been asked to do a presentation at one of my boss's town halls. And not you always feel a little bit nervous, right, about all these things. I think it's abnormal if you don't. You feel a little bit like, oh, the adrenaline kicks in. But Mira, I tell you, I started sweating.
mm,
I felt really worried. I had to write everything down
yeah,
what I was going to say, because I could easily lose track of where I was going quite easily. And you know me, I love to I talk a lot, and and I can just go off track completely. So I
yeah,
was really nervous, and I thought to myself, oh my God, what's wrong with you, Naz? You're never like this, not at this level. And I knew, like, it was a multitude of everything. And I never really talked about it, because I mean, we have quite an open office and an open team, and I'm really pleased to see Barclays really try to break down the taboo of menopause. Because if you think about it, half the population are going to go through through it or are going through it. And when you start reading into the stats, it's quite stark on how it affects women. But it started getting me thinking, because my boss at the time, she's retired now, and she's a woman, and I just suddenly thought, well, how did she get through it, and how did she get to that level? And you start looking around you and start suddenly realizing that whilst the financial industry has a challenge around gender equality more generally, menopause definitely has to play into that, right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm feeling like this, I'm sure many of my other colleagues feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually openly talk about it. And now I see, I think I was talking to you the other day when we had a coffee, right? That more of us are like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening to me. And oh my God, I have to wear like my granny pants today because,
My
or,
period's bad or whatever.
and
Yeah.
it's so funny because now there are these open conversations amongst women, but what needs to happen is it's got to be more broadly, which I'm
Yes.
starting to see,
Yeah.
because I guess men are a key part of this as well, right? And whether it's your partner or a boss or a colleague or whatever. So yeah, it's really tough. And actually, I've just been away for a couple of days. And I was sort of talking to my husband, and I kind of said, "Have I just reached my, that's it, I'm done now?" And he's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "I don't know if I could progress any further. Like, I'm an ambitious person, but part of me is feeling like, oh, do you know what? I enjoy what I do, so I'm going to stick with it. And then part of me is like, no, don't be silly, Naz. You can do more." And it's like, it's just a constant dichotomy of like, one day I feel great, and the next day I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I can't do this today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what it's like for me in the corporate world.
No, well, you know what? I don't think I think it's going to be really reassuring for those women who, whether they're in corporate, whether they run their own businesses, whether they are at home looking after their families and have got hobbies, whatever it may be. I think it's really reassuring because what you've described is exactly what I go through all the time. And there will be days where I just think, what am I doing? Just jack this all in. I just don't have the capacity because I'm exhausted. Um, but then there are days I just think, no, but hold on a minute. What would I do if I didn't do this? This is what kind of lifts me up to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think sadly, it I think sadly that this is the stage at which women who are in the corporate world, who are running businesses, who are out there doing whatever, actually start to dwindle down and start to become exhausted by that constant fight and battle. And actually, that's what needs to stop. That's
Mm,
what needs to be addressed. Because actually, if you are able to go to your workplace and say, right, there are days I'm going to be good, there are days I'm going to be bad. I need your support. Well, how do you need your support? Well, it needs to be tailored to this. Actually, on the days where I'm feeling really rubbish, I need to work from home because that's the capacity. My job enables that. So it's a very bespoke approach that each organization needs to have. For example, at my workplace at the nursery, there's no way I could do that to somebody who's working on the floor with the children because we're ratio based. So I couldn't say
mm,
to them, right, you work from home today.
of
So
course.
actually, we need to think about how can we support you in doing that, whether that's providing the right nutritional knowledge, the right education around getting support from
Mm,
being in a local community, exercising, whatever it may be. That's actually what's really important because the women that I've spoken to, and it has been women other than Harry actually on this
mm.
podcast so far, and it'd be lovely to get some men. So if anybody's listening out there and you know any men that would like to come and talk to me, I would love, love, love to have a conversation with somebody who is part of management or part of HR, that can support this, or even just anybody that's going through it. And from a male perspective, it would be interesting to hear. But it is important for us to be able to those women that I have spoken to that have been guests on the podcast, and those of you who've listened to them, if you haven't, go and listen to them. You will see that all of these women are women who have gone through menopause or are going through perimenopause, who are at postmenopausal, and they suddenly have this real burst of creativity. They kind of just reshape their lives. They suddenly get this burst of this self-esteem where they think, no, I need to do something that's valuable to me, and I feel like I'm making a difference. And that's where it sort of stems from. And I think in a way we need to kind of embrace that actually going through perimenopause, it's almost like, and coming out into menopause and postmenopause, it is almost like you're a little bit reborn. And I know it sounds a bit wacky, but You literally feel like a different person completely, and so much positive out of it as well.
You know, I mean, I can already feel like I'm more direct and less tolerant of what's not acceptable. I can see where you're going with that, Mira. I can actually
Oh,
see that, you know, you're this whole being reborn and finding yourself and doing what's important. I can see that, and I can start to feel that already. So you know, I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. I think it's an opportunity to okay, I guess repurpose what's really important in life.
so Naz, I was just wanted to know a little bit more about your thoughts on what you felt or what you feel that if anybody in the corporate world is listening, anybody who owns a business is listening, anybody who's, you know, supporting women in the workplace is listening. Are there any sort of things that you could perhaps share that you feel that we should pay attention to, that could help the women to continue to strive and thrive and achieve so much more?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. So I was looking
Yeah,
at
it is.
stats.
Yeah.
I was looking at some stats because I think stats always put things into perspective, right?
Yeah.
And there was a survey which you're probably aware of. It was more than 4,000 women were surveyed that were at menopausal age, and 1 in 10 had left their jobs. 14% had then reduced their hours, right? And if you're looking at talent retention, which is something you know we look at particularly in the financial industry because there aren't enough women in senior positions, um, women in the menopausal age bracket, so the mid 40s to 50s or even 60s, are the fastest growing working group in society.
Yeah. Fastest demographic.
Well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you think about that alone, if we were to lose a proportion of that of women, what would that do to the workplace? What would that do to innovation in the workplace, diversity, you name it, right? It would impact. So, if we want more women in senior positions, if we want to really tackle an element of gender equality, then we need to be really committed to understanding the menopause. And I think, firstly, I mean, if I look at what we've done, is obviously raising awareness, right, making it less of a taboo subject. And we, you know, we've done that through, you know, World Menopause Day, for example. We have menopause support groups, which are quite good. And I think the group of ladies, which I'm so thankful for, who've started this, they started it during lockdown. And it started with 10 women. It's now 250 women who've joined that group in London
Amazing.
alone. And then they've spread those groups across the UK. So thinking about what a support group would look like, and it probably takes one or two women to do that, but making it open to men as well so that they understand. And also some of those men will have wives or partners that perhaps are going through the menopause. So it's really educational in many ways. Um, I think you need that. So that's a bottoms up approach. You then need the top down approach, right? So you need the senior people of organizations also recognizing that this is important to their business because ultimately everything affects the bottom line. And so we did get bank funding through the work that those women did. And we get now sort of specialist menopause support, and that's through expert practitioners, video consultations, peer support. So that's all available. And there is in our HR hub, actually, there's actually training available for line managers and colleagues, and a dedicated kind of menopause section. So I think it started to adopt a couple of those things.
Yeah.
I recognise, you know, we're a big organisation, so you know, if you're a smaller business, just having a support group or having some training or whatever it is can make a difference in the first instance. But I
Yeah.
think that top down kind of bottom up approach is really really important. And for me, it's about having the conversation, right? That I can turn around to my colleague and say, well, you know what, I'm actually going through the menopause or I'm perimenopausal, and this is how it affects me. So if you know you see this is why it's happening. It's not because I don't know how to do my job anymore. It's not because I've suddenly lost the plot. It's because this is how a lack of estrogen affects my body. So,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting because I work with a lot of men, and I mean, as you know, Mira, I lost my mum 4 months ago, right? So, along with perimenopause, you've got grief, so everything's kind of coming together. And I actually had to say to my colleagues a few weeks ago, because I think it all just got to a head, that listen guys, really sorry, I am struggling at the moment, um, give me a nudge if there's something I'm missing,
Yeah,
because it's taken me longer to do things. And actually, they were really receptive to that. And
yeah,
I feel quite fortunate that I'm in an environment where I could say that. And I
yeah,
know, recognize that many women might not be, but um, if we could, if that's what organisations can do, that top down, bottoms up approach, I think would is a good first port of
yeah.
call.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of those. And I think every business, I mean, we're a small business, every business can do a little bit, whether it's accessing education, whether it's kind of just raising awareness and making it okay for them to come and, for people to come and speak to you. But actually, as you said, it takes that one person, doesn't it? It takes that one person to start to do it, to actually be brave enough to raise that conversation, start that conversation. And actually, I think one of the other things as well is not to, sometimes I've seen it where, line managers or people further up the chain become very defensive. And that's, that's also something that we need to be aware of. If you are a manager, or, if an employee comes and approaches you, or if you're an employee approaching a line manager, they may not be aware of what you're talking about. They may not even understand or know that it exists or anything about it. So it's actually that thing where it can create animosity, but it's really important to appreciate from the other person's perspective that they may not have the knowledge. So making sure it's from an educational, informative, factual place, whilst quite clearly, this is a very emotional kind of time as well for us all.
And
But
I
that's,
just
yeah,
wanted to say really quickly one thing that you all talk about is representation as well, Mira, because
yeah,
different cultures, different communities will view this in a very different way. And the workplace is the one place where they may get that support. So if we look at
yeah,
Asian women, for example,
yeah.
culturally, things like menstruation and menopause
Just
are
not
just not
talked
talked
about.
about.
No.
Domestic abuse even is another
Yeah,
subject, but the workplace is where they can get that support. So
yeah,
the workplace is a real structure of support for so many people. But it's important that the representation is there. And I think you've said that
absolutely.
many times. It's really
Yeah,
important that, because all women go through this, it's not
yeah.
just white women or Asian women or black women, it's all of us. So it's really important that the role models are there.
Absolutely. No, you're right. And we all experience them. There is research that's beginning to come out there to just to say, and there is some research out there already, which just does say that actually it suggests that women from different cultures and different backgrounds, different demographics, socioeconomic backgrounds will experience menopause differently and experience the symptoms within them differently as well. So, I know it would be interesting just as a task for you to do to see in that menopause support group that you've got with the 200 women, what is the diversity within
Yeah,
that, and actually within that also with your menopause programs and people and speakers and stuff, what is the diversity within that
yeah,
as well, because actually what I've learned, and I've learned it through being in it, is that 99% of the women who take up my program are of South Asian background, and that must have something to do with the representation. That must have something to do with the feel that they can connect with somebody who perhaps is of who may have had similar experiences to them,
definitely.
so is able to relate. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Naz, we could chat on for absolutely ages. I'm like, you know what we're like. We'll meet up for a quick coffee, and like 2 hours later I think we're kind of just about ready to peel ourselves off the chair. I can't thank you enough for joining, because actually I think it's been so insightful, some of the things you've said, definitely some of the kind of food for thought for people who are listening, who perhaps are employees or employers or working within, as you said, that sort of corporate world. um, I would really love it if we ask all our
Mhm.
guests this question, and there have been some brilliant nuggets of information and tips that I've taken away. I have to say, I've used some of them as well. Like the dentist, it's Shabnam, who we had on as a guest, spoke about just spending that 2 minutes doing meditation and mindfulness while you're brushing your teeth, and I was like, oh, this is really good. It's just 2 minutes of my life, but actually I can brush my teeth while being, while kind of breathing and taking stock. But I would love you to share something that you feel, that you cherish, that you practice, that you feel perhaps could benefit our listeners.
Well, there's lots of things. I mean, meditation is a great tool. I mean, personally, I wish I could do more of it. That's one thing that I've definitely got to take away, and that doing it while you're brushing your teeth is a fantastic tip. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, walking is um, a real way for me to just exit from that stress that I find myself in, or if I'm just not feeling myself. I love walking, but when I'm walking, I like to listen to something. So whether it's some music, whether it's a podcast, or you can do walking meditation, which is really
Yeah,
good. You get different,
yeah,
and just spending 10 minutes or 15 minutes doing that. I think for me personally is one of the ways in which I just find myself. I just can be present again and get back, reconnect with myself.
yeah.
And I love walking tours, by the way, which we're all going to take all the women on one of these. But
We're
walking
gonna do it.
tours,
We have to do it. Got to set that up.
because one of the things I think you said when I went to your last coffee morning is education and learning and keeping your brain active. Now, I do read books. I don't read enough. That's another thing. So meditation and reading is important, but I love walking tours. And we've
Yeah.
just been to Paris actually for a couple of days, and we did this amazing walking tour of the Latin Quarter of Paris.
Oh
And the amount
wow.
of history and culture and what you learn. And in that group were students, young people, older people. So you're with a real diverse group of people, which is also really good for you, I think, in terms of
Yes.
your thought and the way you think. But also you're learning something and you're walking at the same time and you're just taking in a different experience. So there's lots of if you're in London, I think across there's lots of free walking tours across the country. Definitely recommend them. But if you can't get to a walking tour, just going outside, walking down your road in your local park and listening to something
Yeah.
that just reconnects with yourself is probably the best advice I could give.
Oh no, it's fantastic. I love that idea. As I think we discussed it. I love that idea of the walking tour because if you can walk while get educated, learn something new, have fun while you're walking, and it's a different experience. You're kind of ticking all the boxes that you need. Um, I think it's fantastic, and perhaps when we post the link to this podcast, we can just post a few of the ideas for the walking tours. That would be fantastic, and we share that with the
Absolutely, it would be my
audience.
pleasure.
Yeah. Naz, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out.
Thank you for having me, Amira, and it's a real honour to be on your podcast. And look forward to seeing you soon.